Hey man, guess what? I just got another freelancing gig. Well, that's cool. What are you getting paid for that? I get 30 bucks an hour. Hey, I don't want to rain on your parade, but that kind of sounds like a job. Hey, I like guaranteed paychecks. It makes me feel safe. Okay? What do you have to do to get that? Well, I guess I also get endless check-ins. I get meetings where we talk about the next meeting and what we're going to talk about in the next meeting. I get Zoom meetings. I get, can you call me? Give me a little update quick. Plus, I get ghosted every time I need some important info from them. I would rather take my dick out and rub it in broken glass than do that. What's up, guys? It's Frankie here. In this video, we're talking poverty programming trap. A lot of people don't realize this, but they really build internet businesses, not just agencies, really all of it, with poor and middle class values. And then when they try and scale it, they find out it has all this sort of resistance, and they really just built like a job, but in disguise. And I wanted to lay this out for you so you guys understand who you need to be in order to not get stuck in those poverty programming traps, so you can actually build real scalable wealth and do it in a way where you're going to have happy clients who really enjoy what you do for them. For those of you guys who don't know me already, my name's Frankie Finn. I wrote these two best-selling books, Passive Automated Recurring Income, Beyond the Agency Box, which you can find a link for below this video. And I've also built 3 of my own agencies up to 100 plus clients and helped thousands of people like you out there to live this more beach, less laptop lifestyle. Let's get into the good stuff.
Yo, it's Frankie Finn. Beach mode engaged. Looms loaded, AI's humming. Let's go!
So I didn't really know this when I was first doing this, guys, but I built my first entire agency up to 100 clients, really with poor and middle class values. And I want to contrast this for you so you can see the difference between like rich, wealthy sort of values, because if you understand this, you won't build for yourself the same kind of prison that I did. And the first is time for money. So in essence, like the way I structured my service is I set it up so that basically clients paid me for a set amount of service per month. It was really like, that's a salary in disguise. And where you want to get to, rich people is really getting in the time for results. And results, by the way, can happen really quickly. My favorite example of this, I have a friend in the legal space. He's an OG. His name is Stephen Fairley. He runs one of the biggest marketing companies in the industry. And he was driving with his family across the state of Arizona. And for those of you guys who've done it, when you're between the big cities, it's just like it's barren. There's not really a lot to see. And he kept seeing periodically the same attorney's billboard. And he knew the guy. So he decided to call him up. And let's just say for the sake of the story, the guy's name is Rich. It's not Rich. But he said, hey, Rich, I got an idea for you. I noticed you have 4 words on your billboard. And I think if you said it with 2 words, you'd make far more money. If you want, I'll give you the 2 words. You go test it out. If it works better, you can just pay me after the fact. I'm asking 50 grand. What do you think? And the guy said, okay, let's try it. He did it. It converted better than his existing message. And Steven got himself a $50,000 paycheck for 2 words, right? So if you believe that what you're doing is you're providing effort and justifying it with activity, which is what I did back in the day, man, you're not going to say, give me 50 grand for 2 words. But why is he able to do that? Well, because he's charging for a result. And what happened is when I priced all my stuff for activity and feeling like I had to earn it, you know, all these platitudes we grow up with where, you know, like I earn my money, I work hard for my money, money don't grow on trees and those kind of things. What happens is you feel like you have to justify a lot of activity, and it really only left me kind of feeling like this.
Why do you suppose I just hurled a chair at your head, Neiman?
I don't know.
Sure you do.
The tempo?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
I don't know.
Start counting.
5, 6, 7.
In 4, damn it! Look at me!
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Now, was I rushing or was I dragging?
I don't know.
Count again.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rushing or dragging?
Rushing.
So you do know the difference!
So this sounds like a small detail. He was clearly rushing, by the way, not dragging. This sounds like a small detail, but what happens here is when I would create packages for clients, I would justify a lot of activity, a lot of meetings to try and demonstrate to them I was working hard for them. Over here, I would often do like the simplest, most direct thing. In fact, often I can think of, we had a service for a couple of years called Digital Omnipresence, where I would take attorneys' best stuff. I would take all their best testimonials and their best content and their best Google reviews and all those things, and I would organize it into a really comprehensive retargeting campaign across different platforms. And I actually didn't write a single ad because it was all based on their best stuff. I had organized it and it took me about 4 hours, but it would produce results because it was based on their best stuff. And they loved it, even though it took me 4 hours to set up and very little sort of ongoing effort. So let's talk about the second thing is when you're in the poor mindset, you want a guaranteed paycheck. And this is really common in our space, by the way, where people say, I'm gonna do nothing for a client until they write me a big old check to get started. And over here is we want ownership of the process. And so I'll give you an example of this. My very first really successful SEO client, he was a plastic surgeon in Dallas. And I remember he, after like 3-4 months, he had asked me to call him. And I really had no idea how much SEO could impact a business. And most of the time, the phone calls up until that point were like, hey, can you explain this report to me? I don't really get what you're telling me is happening here. So I'd call him up. And I remember I said to him something like, his name was Sam. I said, hey, Dr. Sam, I'm sorry for taking up your time. And he laughed at me and said, sorry for taking up your time. He said, you don't get it, do you? You're more important than my office manager. He said, I have no idea what the fuck you're doing, but people have been calling us nonstop and saying, we found you on the Google, we found you on the Google, we found you on the Google. We've added at least $3 million in procedures since you started doing this SEO stuff. I'm so excited to talk to you. And here was the kicker for me. I had asked for a guaranteed $400 a month. I don't know how I arrived at $400 a month, but that seemed like a psychologically satisfying number. So it was like around $5K per year. Now I added $3 million to that person's business. If I had just said it's $400 a month plus 10% of revenue, in other words, ownership, what do you think I would have made more off of? I would have made $300,000 on that same contract had I been taken more ownership of the process and be less attached to a guaranteed paycheck. And by the way, you can actually blend these two worlds, like as I kind of illustrated here. I could have just said to him just 10%, but we could actually do it as a guaranteed paycheck. And most agencies, by the way, do not want ownership, but this is where you actually make all the real money. The danger is if you do this for 5 clients, you're probably going to get screwed once or twice. And over here, you're guaranteed at least to get a paycheck. But the flip side of this is, would you rather make $300,000 or $400 a month? So when I looked at this is how I kind of felt.
Spilling the salt is very bad luck. We're driving across the country. The last thing we need is bad luck. Quick, toss some salt over your right shoulder.
What the hell?
Uh-oh. Too little, too late, Harry.
Who's the dead man that hit me with the salt shaker?
It was a terrible mistake, sir. Please, believe me, I would never do anything to offend a man of your size.
Kick his ass, Seabass! Go ahead, Seabass. You gonna eat that?
What, that? No. Yes. No. Well, no, I'd crossed my mind. Yeah.
Still want it?
Nah, you go ahead.
So let's talk to the next piece of the puzzle. When you're programmed with poor and middle class values, which by the way, almost all of us are programmed as agency owners, as like internet entrepreneurs, like if you were already a trust fund baby and you were independently wealthy, you wouldn't have started this business. And there is a great deal of satisfaction and platitudes and ideas and programming about how it's a good thing to be doing stuff. I remember actually I was with my mother-in-law and we were redoing a patio deck area kind of thing, and she was helping me clean it up. This was in Germany. And we had to go pick something up from the hardware store. I don't know, because I'm not a Mr. Fix-It or whatever. And so my father-in-law left to go to the hardware store, and my mother-in-law just couldn't sit still. She kept having to like re-sweep the same area and re-clean it and do it again and again. And she said, I just feel better doing it. Like I feel more productive. But in reality, she was actually just going in what Dusan Dukovic from Straight Line Leadership would call just going in circles, right? Activity for the sake of activity. And over here is what we want to do is engineer systems. So if you think about the most successful burger operation on the face of the earth, it is a little restaurant some of you guys may have heard of called McDonald's, the old McDonald's, the Mickey D's. And yeah, okay, they're probably not the best burgers in the world, but I'll tell you, they have world-class systems. You can go anywhere in the world. I was in Beijing, China. I don't eat McDonald's, but they had one there. And I guarantee you, if I had ordered a Big Mac, it's the same as the Big Mac you grew up with. It's like you can order a Big Mac just about anywhere. And the reason is because they've built a world-class burger system. Now, most people think it's easier to do it myself. It's faster to do it myself. If you want things right, better do them yourself. And what ends up happening is you really just screw yourself in this kind of way.
I can't feel my fingers anymore. I lie, they're numb.
Ooh, maybe you should wear these extra gloves. My hands are starting to get sweaty.
Extra gloves? You've had this pair of extra gloves this whole time?
Yeah, we're in the Rockies.
I'm going to kill you.
What?
So again, we want to get ourselves away from this idea that in order to justify value, we need to have activity. We need to be doing something. I'm the expert. Nobody does it as good as me. And we want to shift that to I own systems that replicate the results I'm able to create in the world so that other people and my processes and my team are able to produce results. And this is, by the way, the secret to actually being able to hang out on the beach with your family, knowing that results are happening and ownership is happening because you have a system that is getting it done your way. And the secret, by the way, to building systems is just getting it out of your head and documenting how you like things done. And I guarantee you, if you take the time and do that, you have a system or a process for just about everything. Now, here's another advanced mindset piece, is when you're sort of poor and middle class, your client criteria or who you will work with is really anyone. And it's kind of like, imagine somebody's trying to get a date and they're so desperate, they'll just date anybody from the opposite sex. It doesn't really matter if they're a crackhead, it doesn't matter if they, look like a cave troll, it doesn't really matter if they don't shower, as long as they're functioning. And for most people, if you could really break down their client criteria, it's really anybody with a credit card. And over here, what we want to do is be far more selective and really focus on the people. Again, I can't say this enough. We help winners to win more. We don't come in and save businesses. So a lot of times when people choose a niche or choose a client, or sometimes even more generalist than that, they just think, who's my client? Anyone with a credit card that works. And we want to be more selective and focus on the people. How are you selling now? So like, for example, if I went into the roofing industry and I was okay with working with anyone, I'd probably get some crazy redneck alcoholics over here, and then I'd find out I care far more about their business than they do, and they won't even call people back within 3 days. Or I could be more selective and I could work with a guy who has branded trucks and professional shirts and has trained his team on sales and has a quoting process and has a CRM where they track all the leads and has an accounting process and knows their numbers and can tell you what they are. On paper, those are technically both roofers, but this guy over here is probably doing 10 million or more, and this guy over here has probably never made more than maybe 150 grand a year take home and probably never will. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't want to have your entire livelihood tied to anyone the same way you wouldn't want to date any crackhead. Otherwise, it's kind of like this.
Joseph P. Brenner. What's a P stand for?
Pussy.
Good old Arnie. Ah, Joseph P. Brenner. What does the P stand for? Pussy. Ah. All right. Next piece of the puzzle, okay? Over here in your mind when you're in poverty thinking is you think what you are selling is a service. And again, a service is often associated with activity rather than a solution, which is designed to engineer a specific result. So say, for example, I'll give you a real example. One of the things I found out when I was working in the water damage restoration space, by the way, the number one question I got asked over the last, I don't know, like 5-6 years is, if you were me, you were starting over, you want to get to 10K a month as fast as possible, what would you do? I decided to do it. I did it in the water damage restoration space. And one of the first things I did is I joined some of their communities and I asked them, like, what are some of the problems? What kind of clients did they wish they had more of? In their case, they used the word jobs. And what they said to me is there are certain job types that we don't get paid on, even though they make us good money, is that the insurance companies will wait 4 months, 6 months, 8 months to pay us. Ergo, we don't like those ones. And I said, which ones do you like? And they said, Category 3 flood jobs. Then I went a little deeper and said, for those of you guys who are getting residential Category 3 flood jobs, how are you actually getting them? And they gave me a couple of different ways they were getting referrals, and then they said SEO and pay-per-click. Well, I knew right then and there we were going to create an SEO and pay-per-click solution, but we had to kind of really tweak our SEO and pay-per-click solution to focus on what are the keywords and specific ads and specific landing page that drive the results for the specific types of jobs that they're actually trying to get. Now, if we were just over here doing SEO, we just sell them activity. And it's kind of like imagine, for example, you had to do taxes. I know not all of you guys listening are in America, but let's pretend for a second you are. Well, let's say somebody came to you and said, I do monthly bookkeeping. I charge $500 a month. And for $500 a month, I'll do your books. In other words, like, I'll give you activity. Or somebody says, hey, for $500 a month, I will find at least $50,000 in tax saving in your business as long as you're doing at least $250K a year or more. I'll find you $50K in savings, and I'll make sure that you get that like actually legally saved in your bank at the end of the year, and it's just $500 a month. Well, those are both the same person, by the way. But when it's packaged as a solution, which is aiming at a result, an outcome rather than just activity, that is far more appealing, by the way. So I want to kind of stack these up so you guys can really see them, because a lot of people are running agencies where in disguise, they're really trading time for money. They want a guaranteed paycheck, just like a job. They feel like they have to do a lot and they're the only one who does it right. And at the end of the day, they're open to working with anyone who's got a credit card that works. And by the way, when you're used to working with anyone, they cancel a lot. And so you have a lot of churn in your business. And in their mind, they're providing a service where the client gets to decide what's going to happen. And the client decides what the deliverables are. And over here, when you're rich, you're thinking, I want to trade money for results. That should say money, by the way, not time. Money for results. I have an ownership of the process. I have systems that ensure that I will get there. I'm highly selective about who I do it for. And it is a self-engineered solution. I would call this, by the way, the Wolfpack way, which is kind of like this. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell, turtle power. Yeah, I grew up watching that shit. You're damn right I did. So I want you guys to engineer your business on rich values. And you can take this. There are obviously levels to this. Like, for example, the more you want to have ownership, which I think once you have a stable baseline of income, this is actually becomes the most important determinant of whether or not you will actually build real wealth. And for most agencies, this is a total afterthought, if they even think about it at all. So, but there's all kinds of ways you can negotiate this, but you really want to think about, I want my money to come from results. I want to have more ownership of the process, which means also when it doesn't work, I don't get paid. But when it does work, I get an undue share of the process. I have systems that create those predictable results. I'm very selective about who I do this for, and I provide a holistic solution, not just activity. And if you do that, you're going to make a lot more money a lot more often. You're going to have a much better business that you're going to enjoy running more. And ultimately, what you're going to have that the person over here doesn't is what I would call leverage. And what leverage really is to me is that, in essence, one of my mentors says, where can I invest a small amount of energy to get a big output of income? And what happens over here is you actually have to invest big amounts of energy for a small amount of income. But when you actually have a leveraged machine, is that your inputs relative to the output, in the same way that if you think about it, Ray Kroc, if he was alive today, I think he's alive, or is he still alive? I don't know. Ray Kroc, anyways, founder of McDonald's, or the guy at least who helped blew up McDonald's, he would be worth billions and billions, but how many burgers do you think he makes, right? He just owns the burger system, right? And he was very focused on creating and owning the burger system. So you want to be the person, not the one who knows how to make the best burger, but rather the person who owns and controls the burger system. And then what you'll find is you'll escape the poverty programming trap and actually building real wealth. I can't tell you the number of times I see agency owners that build this, eventually get burned out, tell me the agency model isn't scalable, and they give up and quit, and they end up with owning nothing. And the flip side of this is the people who build this, who trade money for results, have an ownership of the process, have systems, are selective, and build solutions, they end up with a sellable asset. And I have friends who've exited agency for tens of millions of dollars, and they never worked that hard. I think of Qasim Aslam, who is a friend of ours who's been on this channel a few times, with some awesome content. And one of the things is Qasim, I think they exited for 20 million or something like that. And he said, I never once ran a Google ad. Why? Because he owned the Google ad system, right? That's the ultimate test, is he was never in the trenches doing, he hired people in the trenches to do it. So I hope this is really insightful and powerful for those of you guys. Really the big difference is over here, you're reactive. You're trying to get hired. In your mind, you're like a poor person where the client chooses you. And over here, you're trying to engineer a system that you can rent again and again and again and get paid for your intellectual property. So I hope this is super powerful for you guys. If you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe, and may the force be with you. Buy my book, or I will sign you up for interpretive dance lessons given by an angry, angry mind.